Welcome back to the Zyori Podcast. Hello, and thank you for joining us here for episode number 63 of the podcast. It is February 20th, 2015, about 6:45 p.m. here on the Pacific Coast. We're a few days past that of the great Saint Valentine and the Day of Love. We're going to talk about that a little bit coming up in this podcast here. Once again, we're going to live stream this bad boy. By Zyori Podcast number 62 was a big one. We did the episode about DAC, all things included. Talked about the event, China, and all sorts of other goodies. Felt good to live stream that one. A lot of people said, "Hey, I didn't even know you did a podcast. What's going on, man? This is really cool. You should do more video podcasts. This was awesome." So this week, we don't have nearly as much good, juicy Dota stuff to talk about. My weeks fluctuate. Some weeks I get tidbits into really interesting, cool things that I can talk about publicly on stream to you guys, and other weeks most of my efforts are working on projects that aren't announced yet or things that I just can't really share with the masses. So we have a couple of upgrades this go around. I've got the Twitch chat transparent live. I don't know why I decided to do that. Part of the appeal of the Zyori Podcast is I can record it, sit down, get in my own zone, not have to worry about anyone else. And here I've got the chat up so that you guys can troll and make comments as we go along in this podcast here. I am open to suggestions though, Q&A wise. I'm going to try and glance at it from time to time, see if you guys have anything interesting to say or any questions about what I'm talking about. But it's meant to be more of a monologue than a back and forth conversation. Remember as well, you can always subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, one of the easiest ways to get to the feed. You can find everything else you need to know about the podcast at ZyoriTV. Else, go to the iTunes link, and rating, liking, subscribing, all that stuff over there certainly does help the podcast get a little more exposure. So, Valentine's Day, first on the docket. I did absolutely nothing exciting. It was a sad Valentine's Day outside of, the sad fact that I didn't do anything remotely romantic, did not go out on any dates, did not see any nice ladies. Unfortunately, there was another member of my family that passed while I was outside of the country in China. And I talked about it a little bit last week, but not in much detail, and I actually wanted to make more of a little statement about it. But the last two times I've left the country, somebody's died. When I went to this past season of Star Ladder Season 11, about halfway through the event, I think on that Thursday or Friday, one of my pretty close high school friends died of a brain tumor. I knew he had cancer. I knew he was not really doing that hot, but last I'd heard he was in remission. And he had been checked out of the hospital. He was at home and slowly but surely getting better. He had an operation, all this kind of stuff. And partway through the event, I saw an update that it just took a turn for the worse. He was hospitalized again, and he died 48 hours later, maybe something a little bit less, more like 40 hours or something. So that kind of sucked a little bit. And when you're at an event, you really have to just zone that stuff out. I'm halfway across the world. I'm on a different time zone. I barely know what's going on. There's really just nothing you can do to help. There's nothing you can do to contribute. You can't really console your friends from afar. And you kind of just have to go, well, that sucks. I'm going to push this out so I'm not tilted during the event, and then I'm going to process this later when I get home. And that also sucks because you're kind of isolated. Everyone else has kind of moved on from it at that point, or at least trying to, and you're just beginning your grieving process, and it's a little strange. But I feel like in general, I'm pretty good at handling death. I've mentioned many a time my parents are veterinarians. And I've seen a lot of shit die in my day. I've had family members die when I was younger. The individual that my mom was with after my parents divorced died of brain cancer. I'm pretty good at just handling it. Death's a part of life. It's one of the few certainties you get in this world. So it's, I don't get too choked up about older people dying as much. It's like they had a happy life. It's, you live to see your great grandkids. You went around the block, you achieved all this stuff, you made some money, you toured around the world, you didn't have to get dentures. You lived, you fucking won, you died, it's okay. That's part of the cycle. You're not going to live forever, right? But it's really sad when someone young dies, when a parent has to bury their kid. That's always extra sad and just not the way it's kind of supposed to be. So that hurt a little bit. I mostly felt bad that I didn't go see him when I had the opportunity when I was last in Jersey. I was there after Christmas. I was in LA for Christmas itself. We were casting Starladder on Christmas Day, had our little shindig, and like 3 or 4 days after Christmas is when I flew home to New Jersey for like a week and a half, 2-week stay, my Christmas vacation, and I had the opportunity to see him, and I didn't, just because it wasn't very convenient. And I kind of said to myself, well, he's doing better. It seems like he's in remission completely. I'll get to see him again. I don't have to do it on this trip. I'll be back soon. Good chance I'll be back on the East Coast for PAX, that kind of shit. And, of course, he dies like a week after I get back and, end up going to the Ukraine. So that whole thing just sucked. And I was more sad that, I was just in Jersey, so there's no way I was going to be able to fly back. I wasn't going to be able to go to the funeral. Wasn't going to be there for my friends. And, I was kind of close with him for a few years in high school, but it was really someone that I was best friends with for most of high school, was best friends with him for a pretty extended period. So it was more, supporting the people around that shit. Now, it happened again when I'm in China, except this time it's a family member. Now, it's a very strange situation. It's my step-grandmother. My grandfather is actually widowed once, just, straight up. His wife, my actual paternal grandmother, died of a heart attack. And, he ended up remarrying. He knew some nice lady from his high school, and they were exchanging notes. They would go to college. Oh, it was so cute. And they ended up getting married, and they've been together for a while. So now my grandfather is twice widowed in his early 80s. And that is brutal. That's like the curse of living a healthy life to some degree. This guy's like, he's got good genes, I guess. Doesn't have cancer yet, reasonably healthy, pre-diabetic, but not quite there. Cut sugar out of his diet, and now he's like, what do I do? I'm lonely as fuck. I did everything right, and now I'm super lonely. It's really tough. And again, I just had this feeling of, oh god, this again. If it was just one or the other, one isolated death, it wouldn't have bothered me so much. It's just, it's sort of like you have like a death credit, and your ability to handle it. Sort of, you remember those old CD players, and they would have to buffer a little before it would have like okay, you're protected, you can shake it a little bit, and it's not going to skip. It would have that little cup, it would kind of fill up when you could shake it, and then you'd start running, and the cup would go down. I feel like I have that same metric for handling death, where like every so often my cup's full, okay, cool, it takes some water out of the cup, but when you're still building that cup back up and someone else dies, you're just like, my cup just broke, I just dropped it, and now I don't have enough money to buy a new one. What am I going to do? And again, I had the same feeling of, it just sucks that I'm not there for the people that really care about this person. Obviously, I was upset that my step-grandmother died, but I felt more bad for my family that was around and dealing with it in like that time when you can be the most supportive just by showing that you care, you're there, you're taking anything you can off their plate, and then you're like, well, I'm in China. Let me write an email that says my condolences once more. Son of a fucking bitch. So again, you go back and you're sort of just starting your grieving process when everyone else has already gone through the thick of it and either passed the funeral or looking towards it. So anyway, leaving the country has made me feel just a little funky recently, or at least future trips to leave the country, because one of my other grandparents is not really doing so well, so I don't know. I guess it's possible someone else could die while I'm gone. I will be attending another event coming up in about a month's time, so it's weird. It's superstitious. I'm not one that's normally superstitious. I can drive over a bridge and have a conversation about the statistical likelihood that this bridge breaks and we drive into the water. It doesn't bother me, but this is actually a little eerie and a little spooky. So you might be asking, why are we on this tangent? It all comes full circle, because that's how I spent my Valentine's Day. That was the first day I saw my grandfather since I was back from China. He lives kind of close to where he lives in California, so I drove out, and I felt there was some just poetic beauty there. And all right, the Lover's Day, always a big day, and they would always go out and do some stuff. So it was like, okay, I will volunteer to forgo my personal Valentine's Day of perhaps having a Dota date, doing a fun stream, doing something else, and I'll go spend some. I tweeted out just like Valentine's Day with the family, and that's exactly what it was. One-on-one time with the grandfather, and it was a little harder than I thought. All things considered, he's in a great state of mind. He's been through the ringer already once, so he knows what to expect, knows what's going on. But it just sucks when you feel powerless, and like you're like a spectator. I'm stuck nearby, like oh my. So yeah, that was just rough, and certainly didn't make the time at DAC any easier. I'm pretty good at blocking stuff like that out when you're when you're at an event, but it's always there. You're going to bed at night just thinking about all the stuff that you could have done if you were there, and all the things that just suck about the world and all that kind of shit. So it's been a bummer. That's part of the reason why around Valentine's Day I had like a good 3 or 4 days right before that as well of just like dead time, post-event depression. That's actually a real thing. Maybe a tangent worth talking about here, but it's strange how post-event you actually get into this little bit of a depressed state. And I think some of it is the adrenaline. Like anytime you're working an event or at an event or doing something that the nature is just these really long days and there's this storyline that builds and you're just kind of, you wake up, you get in the zone and you work until you go to bed, and then you do the same thing the next day. You get this natural adrenaline going that kind of carries you through it. The summit is a great example of one that's just, you go in just full, just in the zone. You're totally focused on everything event related. What's coming my way? What are potential problems we're going to have? How are we going to get through it? And at the end, you kind of have to just wind down, and you kind of crash at some point. It's sort of similar to being in university when you have the end of the semester where all the papers are due, you have to go through all the stuff, all the big group assignments, and you have finals, and it's super intense, super stressful, and then it's all done, and you have those few days where like, I really feel like I should be doing something right now. This is kind of, you mean I don't have to do anything today? You mean my job is to just lay on the couch and sit here and just relax and try and unwind? All right, I can do that. I can get behind that. So we always have that at the end of any major event. But there is also that minor depression from, like, esports is kind of like being in a long-distance relationship, right? Your long-distance relationship, you see each other every other month, every 3 months, maybe every 4 months if you don't have a lot of money or you live really far apart and you can't afford to fly across the world 4 times a year. You kind of get used to that hyper-socialization. You have 1 or 2 weeks where you're just like, oh, this is great. We're fucking like rabbits. We're really hitting it off. It's amazing. And then you leave and you're all sad and you go back and you kind of crash and hit that roller coaster and you're like, man, this really sucks. I just don't want to be alone in bed and she's all the way in Norway and I'm all the way in America. What am I going to do? And you're just all grumpy. Esports is kind of like that. You go to these events and all your friends are there. I get to see people like Cyborg Matt, like Charlie, these people that I get to see like 4 or 5 times a year. I trust them. I respect them as colleagues. They're so valuable to talk to just for advice, to share notes and kind of just exchange perspectives and, just talk about what's going on in the scene. And then you leave the event and I go back home and I'm like, oh man, I have all these great friends. Everybody likes me. We're having so much fun together. Dota's awesome. And then you come back and there's just nothing. I don't have any friends here. I got the roommates, we got some friends, but not a lot. It's not the same thing. It's not like I can just walk downstairs and there's like every team manager of the top tier teams in the world just hanging out drinking beers and we're exchanging notes talking about Dota and, our future plans, things that are wrong, things that are right. You just get into this natural kind of slump of just, it's going to be a while before I get to see my long-distance friends again. It's a strange dynamic for the relationship. Someone like Cyborg Matt, I've met the guy in person like 4 times, maybe 5 or 6. I've actually lost track. Let's see. Summit, Star Ladder, TI, DAC. Around 5 or 6 times I've met him in person and we've hung out and talked, That doesn't seem like a lot of times, but the times that you do get to talk to him are kind of hypercharged. It's, all right, we got to play catch-up. We haven't really talked much the past few months. And you actually develop these really close relationships with people that are pretty far away on the other side of the globe. And that's part of the appeal of esports, man. That's part of what I love about it. Part of what makes it so much fun is that I get to travel around, I get to exchange cultures, meet people on other sides of the world. That's always been a big appeal for me. I remember, like in undergrad, hearing one of my professors talk about like the idea of running a business, that there's like a bunch of different business types of like, why am I in business? And one of them is you're pursuing your hobby for free. It's like, well, I like to travel. If you like to travel, and that's something you want to do anyway, any job where traveling is part of the job, and you get everything paid for, and then also get paid to travel, you're living the dream. You're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. And I always looked at esports kind of in a similar way. Even when I was paying to travel, it's like I can still write this off. This is still a business expense. I'm having fun doing business. This is great. This is about as close to the dream as I have come in my short life. So anyhow, that was my sad Valentine's Day. I needed a little break from the net, so sorry to those of you that wanted to watch me stream, even though I wasn't. But hey, sometimes real life comes first. You got to be close to those that are close to you. Zyori, why aren't you friends with anyone at the BTS house? We are friends, but it's different. When you're roommates, it's like you're hypercharged friends. It's just a different relationship. it's just very I don't know the right word. Incestual is the word that comes to mind, but that sounds a lot worse and gayer and more sexualized than anything is in the real world. But it's just strange when you live with people and then you work with them full time, and then the nature of your work is such that there's a big gray area between working and playing. This is a perfect example. Me streaming, playing sub games, that's a mixture of work and fun. It doesn't directly help the bottom line of BTS, but it's not purely just recreational me watching Netflix by myself, right? I'm still growing my brand, extending my reach, and what's good for me on that sense is also good for BTS. So a lot of what we do is a mixture of work and play. Same example of like if Charlie's in town and he comes and crashes at our house for a couple days. We hang out with him and talk to him, and we're friends with him, but we're also like business contacts with him. So you're kind of working, but you're also kind of hanging out and drinking and having a good time. It's all sort of part and parcel. So there's no way that you can live in this kind of an environment and work in this kind of an industry without being friends with the people that are in your house or in your vicinity or work for your company. Like it's not the kind of job where you can just show up, clock in, clock out, and be like, I fucking hate all these people, but I'm just going to deal with it because I get a good paycheck and I like my job. It's much more immersive than that. You really have to put a lot of yourself into it, take a lot of yourself out of it, and the nature of that is your friends and business contacts are kind of all muddled together and one and the same. So I'm certainly friends with everybody at the BTS house, but it's not the same, I think, what most people would say of like their friends compared to their boss. Someone like LD, he's my boss, he's kind of my mentor, he's obviously my friend. It's a weird relationship. It's an interesting dynamic. We can have very honest talks in some ways, but in other ways, you don't really just want to sound off to your boss whenever you're having a bad day. You don't want to just wake up and just start bitching about all the things that are under your skin. Sure, you could, but that's probably not the best way to, create a positive work environment. So, everyone in the house are not friends in the same way that you can just hang out with your friends that have different jobs, work in different industries, have some beers, and just be like, can you believe the fucking bullshit my boss made me do today? And just sit there and bitch about work and life and all the things that could have been why you're unhappy. We don't really have that same dynamic. If we all treated each other that same way, like you're just generic friends, we would all want to fucking kill each other because it'd just be this negative shit fest of everybody complaining about. I mean, maybe there are people out there that are positive and we're all just a bunch of cynical ninnies, but I vent a lot. That's what I do to my friends. Like, I complain, I vent. Rob can vouch that I'm a complainer. LD's a complainer too. It's part of our personalities, I guess. So anyway, long story short, I'm certainly friends with everybody here, but it's just a sort of a difference in nomenclature. Try not to take too many questions out of chat, but I do have a college degree. I have a degree in business. There's a whole bio on my website you can read if you're interested. I went to a school called Rowan University in South Jersey. Nice little public university. I've got a bachelor's degree in entrepreneurship. All right. Pat on the back for being pretentious. I could have just gotten a business administration degree or something normal. It's one of those degrees that is like 2 credits different from a regular business degree. It's like instead of taking another organizational objectives class, I took a innovations and creativity class so I could learn how to be an innovator. It's one of the more pretentious names for a degree, but I basically just have a degree in small business. That's my Yep. Who knows? Maybe grad school's in the future. I always looked at grad school as like a fallback plan. Things get boring, things aren't working out the way I want. Fuck it, I'll just go to grad school, why not? I don't know what I'd go for, I don't know what I'd do, but grad school, I'm glad I went to college right after high school so I could just get it done. I didn't transfer, I did switch my major once, actually. I was a computer science major for my first year, then switched to business, but I was glad to just get that shit done, get it out of the way. Now when I talk to people my age, they're like, I'm halfway through my degree. I'm like, that sucks. No judgment, but I'm not jealous. I'm glad that I just knocked it out and didn't have to raise a kid, work full time, and then try and do all this other shit and then go to school full time. It's like, I pity people that get stuck in that situation. Really sucks to raise a kid and go to college full time at the same time. It's not fun. It's not good. So, all right, there is a lot of non-Dota stuff to talk about in this podcast. We're about a third of the way through it, so let's go ahead and continue talking about Dota in the first half. Then second half, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about Pot in New Jersey. We're going to talk about Magic Amy, the Hearthstone scammer, the imitation game. We're going to wrap this one up by talking about a little bit of porn. Everybody loves porn. That's what the internet's good for. We're going to talk about Rashida Jones and some of the statements that she made regarding sexuality versus sexualization. I firmly disagree with a lot of her points, and I've always liked her as an actress, as a woman. Not afraid to speak her mind, stand up for what she thinks is right. But oh man, once you start shoveling some of that liberal manure all over the internet, that's when we've got to talk about it and start a bitch fest. So KOTLguy, he has been added to be on the summit. Very exciting, very good. I'm pumped up that we were finally able to announce it. We can talk about it publicly. I think he's going to be going on Toffee's talk show pretty soon to talk about high ground, talk about BTS, and do the whole Toffee's thing. Yeah, go through the runner and talk about all things KOTLguy related. Should be pretty fun. I can't wait. I like Dakota a lot. He is going kind of like 50-50. You'll see him in the studio a bit more. He's married, of course. He has ties in New York, so not coming out to New York, or pardon me, not coming out to California right away, but still happy to have him as a full-time member of the team. And, I'm going to reiterate some of the stuff that LD said on rather Gerg Live and Uncensored last night about the BTS monopoly and the oversaturation and all that kind of stuff. I pretty much agree with like 95% of what he said on Gerg Live last night. So if you've already watched that, then this is just going to be a little bit of regurgitation. But I think Dakota is a really good example that the BTS monopoly, in air quotes, does not prevent up-and-coming casters from becoming like premier casters, whatever phrasing you want to use to sort of distinguish the tiers of casters. But Dakota is a great example of someone who's naturally very talented. He's an older gentleman relative to most esport ages, and he is an actor by trade. He's been trained to be an actor. He's done a lot of Broadway acting, all this kind of stuff, and tried out for movies, and he's done the whole professional thing and had real training. So he's really good on camera. He's just naturally a good presenter, very charismatic, very naturally funny. He has a very good sense of like his soundboard, when to use it, what's overusing it, what's underusing it, all that kind of stuff. And in general, he's just a really mature guy, really easy to work with, and has a really, really strong work ethic. So he's just the kind of the perfect package. I think he was a no-brainer for the most part when we were saying we need somebody else. What are our options? And the group pretty unanimously put Dakota at least in their top 2, if not top 3 of candidates. And we're like, well, that seems to be the commonality. Are we all okay with this? And we brought him out, and it was amazing. The first taste of Dakota we got was the NA Hub last year for the TI4 qualifiers, and we were all pleasantly surprised with just his eagerness to learn. Before every match, he wanted to take notes, learn about the teams, make sure you could pronounce the players' names right, and just kind of continue learning and improving every day. So that's a big aspect of what we look for. I think there's a lot of misconceptions that people have regarding esports casting and thinking that you can become a star overnight. I don't particularly want to name drop here. I think who I'm talking about will know who he is, but if he even listens to this podcast. But sort of, I've heard people make mention that the only reason the popular casters right now are popular is because they get the popular content. Like, anybody who's casting Navi Alliance is going to have 1 million viewers and be really popular. And there is a minor degree of truth in that statement in terms of having the popular content is a necessity to kind of skyrocket your rise to popularity. Like, for example, the TI3 finals versus the TI4 finals, if you have the same casters, same quality, same setup, but just the different games, one is naturally going to be way better than the other. To have a really just amazing, one-of-a-kind, top-notch, world-class cast, you also need that one-of-a-kind, top-notch, world-class match to go on top of it. And I think casting is, that's a perfect example of how casting is and how the space is, where you have to grind a lot. I'm sure some people look at my Twitter followers, listen to me cast, and go, how the hell does that guy have 12,000 Twitter followers? This guy fucking sucks. Where did he come from? How did he get so popular overnight? It's like, dude, I've been grinding that Twitter account for like 4.5 years. That's not even a hyperbolic exaggeration. It's just, it takes a really long time, and it takes that persistence to kind of get your foot in the door and also prove to people that are already established in esports that you're one who understands it's not going to happen overnight. That you say, oh, I've been working on this for 3 years. If I haven't quit yet, I'm probably not going to quit anytime soon. And you can sort of use that on your esports resume as credence to your work ethic and really your desire to make it in esports. And you see some of these casters that have been at it for like 6 months, 8 months, and they're really good relative to how long they've been casting, but they still have a long way to go in terms of being a really premier caster. And I feel like I can say that confidently because I was there. I remember doing Dota Radio, for the first time breaking 10,000 viewers, for the first time breaking 50,000 viewers, doing that Starladder Season 8 coverage from my house when I was still living in New Jersey, and just having it kind of blow my mind, just thinking I just broke a new personal record. This is a new threshold of eyeballs on my content. And at the time, I felt like that was the peak of my casting. I was really at the best I'd ever been. And I think at the time that was actually a pretty true statement. But the difference is it's all a sliding scale. It's like an economy of scale. I might be the best that I have been, but relative to someone like LD or Gods, who are actually A-tier casters, I was dog shit. I remember the first tournament I did with LD, the ESP Shock Therapy Cup, and my camera work was awful. I hadn't cast in a month, so I was kind of stuttery. I was not very fresh. LD was not that comfortable in the analyst role yet. It was just really difficult and really hard. And I remember after that tournament was done thinking, I came into this with a really big head, feeling like I've made it, I deserve this job is yours, you just have to go and show up and nail it. And that's kind of true. I did deserve it, and I was probably the best choice at the time, but I still had a lot of work to do, a lot of work to do to improve camera control, just overall presentation, overall cadence, not talking too fast, not talking too slow, knowing when to hype, knowing when to slow down, and just getting better at the whole thing, closing shows without saying, okay, folks, so we're going to wrap up here, and pretty soon after this break, you're watching Beyond the Summit. And also, don't forget, there's something to be said for those clean-cut, just, all right, you're watching Beyond the Summit, we'll see you tomorrow. And then just cutting it there, signing off, a very clean exodus from the stream. That takes a surprising amount of discipline. It took me a long time to not have these wordy exits to go on and on about all the different things that we need to talk about, and all that stuff takes practice, and it takes a long time. It takes more than a year of practice. I've been doing this esports broadcasting thing for a pretty fucking long time, and I'm still I'm finally at the point where I feel sort of okay saying I'm a professional broadcaster, even though I'm still pretty young and amateurish in a lot of ways, especially to the real broadcasters. Is one of my biggest problems. I've probably said too many times in this podcast already. That is my go-to nervous fill word when I'm thinking about what I'm going to say, when I'm thinking hard about making sure I'm not flaming or revealing any information that I'm not allowed to talk about. I often just shoot out a I said to the guy, come on, man, what are you thinking? And he was like, well, I don't know, what are you thinking? And I was like, well, listen, this is how it is. I've listened to my own podcast, and I know that's what happens. I can hear it when I listen to it back, but in the moment, you don't hear it. All those things take a lot of time and a lot of just raw hours on the mic to get out. And that's something a lot of people don't seem to understand. And Dakota, being a little bit older, being more practiced, he was able to move up more quickly because he already had a lot of hours on the mic. Not literally, but in that presentation kind of mindset in front of an audience, what have you. So I think him coming out of nowhere, just being a guy that put on a KOTL mask one night when he was, or a KOTL hat and a beard rather, one night when he was drunk, and just started streaming and slowly grinded his way up to, cast Canada Cup, work with the high ground guys, get to cast TI4, and now he's a full-time top tier Dota 2 caster. And BTS helped make that transition possible, and identifying him as up-and-coming talent and sort of helping nurture that growth slow and steady. And now there are a lot of people that recognize his skills, and I think he's gonna continue to grow, man. He's rising up like yeast. That whole long anecdote about casters and not understanding how long it really takes to grind your way up in the scene is just an homage to the point that the BTS monopoly does not prevent up-and-coming casters from becoming full-blown casters. There's this whole mixture of specific skill set, specialization, reliability, natural talent, work ethic. For some people, it's just a matter of having a living situation where you have the hours to practice broadcasting at a full-time level. There's a lot that goes into it. I've always said to people in esports, there's a degree of serendipity. There's a degree of luck. I know that I've worked hard in esports. I know that my drive to just really want it more than anything else has been a big factor in me being able to find a full-time job just casting. But it's a little bit more than that. The main reason I was hired at BTS is because I was in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing around people who were looking for that thing that had the money to pay for it. That can be a hard thing to come by, right? They wanted somebody who was a Dota caster and pretty decent with a good voice, someone that wanted to play kind of a host role because they needed to brand someone as a host for their LAN events and various other things they do in the studio. And the big thing is they wanted somebody that could take point on show content. And when I first met LD and Parker in person at MLG Columbus 2013, that was while we were doing the Dota Radio morning show, like in the thick of it. It was like halfway through its life cycle of that first season. So it was just picking up momentum. A lot of people knew about it. LD was watching it a little bit. And after that event was when we kept doing the Dota Radio morning show, and then I was casting Starladder Season 8 on the BTS channel. So they were impressed with my ability to do my own projects and also do all of my projects with them, and also that I was doing show content. They were like, we kind of want similar content like this on our channel. This is part of what makes you an appealing person, and they wanted someone that was more than just a caster, somebody that could kind of step up, have a little bit more of an active role in the business side of things, and just take point on stuff like show production and various other things. So I was just doing the right thing at the right time. I didn't make a cent from Dota Radio. I was in the red in Dota Radio. We probably made like $30 in commercials for all of it. The whole kit and caboodle, all the work we did. We didn't have a sub button back then. We had no sponsors. I had to pay artists, to make the assets and buy the hosting and do all the stuff. And we didn't make a penny. The whole point of Dota Radio was to be a living, breathing portfolio. At the time, Charlie wasn't an established team manager. He had been a little bit. MLG Columbus was kind of his breakout as being like that big top dog manager, especially when Speed Gaming won before they were Cloud9. So it was just a time where Charlie and I were both like, had a history in esports, wanted to push it to the next level, and were actively looking for jobs as postgraduates. And Chris, or Hippie, was just a guy I'd been casting with, sort of in a similar situation in terms of his timeline with graduation. And we just wanted to use it to keep ourselves relevant, keep our voices out there, and have our voices be heard so that there's, more to look at for all of our potential employers. And for Charlie and I, it worked out like a charm. He went to EG, and I went to BTS. Chris, unfortunately, got the short end of the stick and had to go back to a more conventional gig. But my point is, again, in saying all this, that you have to make yourself special. You have to make yourself stand out to kind of rise up and break through. And it's very easy to take that kind of scapegoat, that kind of cop out of, the BTS monopoly. That doesn't really make a difference. If you're talented, if you're a hard worker, if you don't sleep through casts, if you show up when you're supposed to, when you mess up, you recognize it, you figure out why it was a mess up. And, our big thing is it's okay to screw up. We do a lot of things that we're learning along the way. What's important is taking something away from that fuck up so you can say to yourself, hey, this is what went wrong, and this is how we're going to prevent that fuck up from happening again, or this is how we're going to, prevent this fuck up from being so detrimental if it does happen again. There's always something you can learn, and that's something we really value in casters and just people that we work with in general, is that kind of integrity and honesty and that confidence to say, hey man, I messed this up. You're right. I bit off more than I could chew. I thought this would be the right approach. I tried it. It didn't work, and now I'm stumped. I don't know. I need help. Tell me what to do. Let's work through this together. That's the kind of dialogue that we look for in people. And Dakota has that kind of mindset. He has that, there's a bunch of cables here. Well, why don't we sit down and just start coiling them up? I don't need somebody to tell me to start working. I can see that everyone else is working. I'm going to go ahead and offer, what can I do to help, guys? I'm not being efficient right now. How can I improve the process? That's the kind of mindset Dakota takes and why he's such a gem to work with. And I think anybody that has that mindset and is a good caster and really has the drive to push themselves to the limit, it's possible. The big demand right now, of course, is for analysts, and it's hard to be an analyst if you're not an ex-pro. That's just tricky in general. You don't quite have that same level of just grabbiness, that same level of, all right, you know what you're talking about kind of a thing. Very hard for non-ex-pro analysts like your Loomies, your Draskels, who haven't really been relevant in Dota 2 as professional players. I think they established their brands early enough that they'll be okay, and they're established as professional players, but it's more like the Cinderins, the Merlinis, and future players that are going to retire that are really best suited for that kind of a role. So if you really want to do it, you really want to be a caster, keep your nose to the grindstone. For me, after I graduated, I was full-time esports for like 6 to 8 months, and I honestly didn't know what that meant when I first said that to myself. I really thought that, working like 25 hours a week of good, solid, hard work was working pretty hard. And, a lot of my issues were that, things weren't going my way, or I was unlucky, or I almost had this, but it fell through because of some other excuse. And when I was doing Dota Radio, it just kind of occurred to me one day that, if I really want to do this, if I really want my job to be to wake up and cast Dota, I should just fucking wake up and start casting Dota. You know, I had to step on some toes to do it. I was casting off of tickets, a little bit less taboo back then, but I also said to myself, I don't want to cast this amateur stuff. Because if I get an opportunity to cast Na'Vi versus Alliance, I want to make sure I know these players, I know these teams, and this is the caliber of Dota I want to set my standard to. And that was kind of the part of the beauty of Dota Radio, that it was providing coverage for games in an audio-only format for the big games that already have coverage. So you're sort of stepping on someone's toes. At the time, I thought it would be a little bit different enough, almost like an alternative language that people wouldn't mind, but positioning yourself so that you're doing the big game so that when you have a shot, you don't fuck it up. One of the worst things that can happen in any kind of performance-based, broadcasting-like environment is when you get a shot that you're not ready for. You know, BTS calls you in, we have a shortage of talent, we go, hey, we need you to cast Starladder today. There happens to be a secret game, right? And you're thinking, oh, sweet, cool, I get to cast Starladder. You're pumped up, you're casting on BTS, and then you think about it, you're like, crap, I haven't watched a secret game in a month. I've been casting Dota 2 Cup, or Canada Cup, I've been casting the Amateur, I've been casting the Pro Leagues. Oh, shit. And you know what's going on? You get up there, and you call Havost Xbox. Oh, boy, is that embarrassing, right? You are forever known as, oh, who's this caster I've never heard of? I don't know. That's the guy that doesn't know how to read Havost because he's some noob idiot. That you've shot yourself in the foot right there. You might have pretty good analysis. You might be a pretty good caster, but you've instantly just nosedived the respect that people are going to reckon that they give you because of just branding, and you're in a position, you're set up to fail. That's what we call it. You're being set up to fail, where you're in a position too big for your shoes, you're just not ready to handle it, and you look terrible. You know, that's one of our biggest priorities when constructing a panel for an event like Starladder or DAC is a good example of who's on the panel right now. Does this panel consist of 4 play-by-play casters? If so, then we're probably setting up all 4 of these people to fail. It's not going to be an interesting panel. How could it be an interesting panel? None of these people have any kind of analytical insight. It's not their fault. It's just not their skill set. You know, a Zyori, Bruno, Shiver, LD panel, not really that good. You really want to have at least one dedicated analyst on there. You want some different perspectives. A dedicated player is always good, that kind of stuff. So, long story short, there is still mobility in Dota for talent, especially for casters. You just have to have the work ethic to get there and really practice. And I don't know, it's this weird balancing act of working for free and kind of gauging how shitty you are and knowing what opportunities you should go for and which ones you need to sit back and continue building your portfolio for. There's no way to get there without taking risks. There's no way to get there without looking stupid. You know, you got to dare to be bold, dare to be different. I mean, I had dreads for 4.5 years as a gimmick to try and stand out in esports. It worked, but you know, it came at a cost. I didn't have sex for a long duration of that 4.5 years. So anyway, enough about Dakota. That was a much longer rant that I wanted to go on, but it just seemed appropriate. I don't know. I can't read chat and talk. Again, the Zyori Podcast is meant to be more of a monologue. I'm trying something new with putting the chat up on the screen with the transparency. We're trying some new improvements around the ZyoriTV stream in general. Just doing the podcast on the stream is a step in the right direction. So leave me some feedback. That's what I'm talking about here. Of course, you can always find the audio-only versions at ZyoriTV. So, all right, now that we've talked about KOTLguy, Summit 3 is right around the corner. There will be a big official announcement coming very soon. The online qualifiers, or at least the beginning rounds, will be starting up again in the very near future. I don't want to spoil the dates until stuff is ready to go, but that is kind of our big priority right now outside of casting, is getting all that shit out the door. So, all right, moving forward for the next half of this podcast, we're going to talk about the non-Dota things that we have on the docket this week. We've got some juicy ones. Let's talk about Magic Amy first. We're going to go Dota into general gaming and esports, then into the non-related things that I've found funny, weird about the week. Magic Amy is one interesting situation. Long story short, for those of you that are not privy, Magic Amy is a Hearthstone streamer. She was pretty popularly known as the most skilled female personality that plays Hearthstone. She was one of the top tier players. She signed with Tempo Storm. That's a big website where there's guides and various other learning. I'm not a big Hearthstone guy, but I'm sort of aware of what Tempo Storm is, how it works, and you know, you get guides, and it's a learning resource. So it's designed for like your top tier players to post tips about the meta, and you know, people can read it and learn from there. So All this is relevant because there is some backstory about who she actually is. As it turns out, she's just a pretty face. It seems like that there is someone, some man, presumably, someone sitting there playing the games for her, and she's just sitting there on camera talking about it. The magic of cinema, I guess you could say. She's just sitting there. She's basically just casting a guy playing games, but pretending it's her playing and cheering. And it's a cute little Asian girl doing the little Asian girl clap, and the big issue is she was invited to ESL. They wanted her to come to a LAN, and first she said, "Oh, I don't have a passport. That's not going to work." And then she said, "Oh, I can't get a visa." And then she said, "Oh, my mom won't let me go." And some people started getting a little suspicious, and they went, "Oh, Magic Amy, why are you being so weird about coming to an event?" That seems weird. So how did they actually figure it out? I'm actually looking at the article right now. I skimmed through it. So that she shared screens with others playing in ESL, no other evidence. He alleged that these people coaching her during the games helped her win, adding to the mystery. She pulled out, and yeah. So things are very, very weird with this. Basically, people got suspicious, and obviously, you're not allowed to play tournaments pretending to be people. Dota has similar rules like that, right? You can't have a stand-in that's actually a player on another team under some goofy, made-up, stupid name. Like Loda can't stand in for Secret under the handle Poop Shoot and just be this weird, mysterious enigma. I mean, people have tried to get away with that, but it's frowned upon. That's disingenuous. You're not supposed to do that. So there's a good article about it here. I'll drop the link on Daily Dot that kind of goes over some of the details. So of course this happened in South Korea. I'm not surprised this general thing has happened. It looks like her Facebook page has been deleted, and now it redirects to this gentleman's page, which is also just a bit suspicious. A lot of suspicious things here. Magic Amy. Anyway, I don't know that much about it. I think I don't care about the details in this story as more as the sort of macro discussion you can have about integrity in esports and all this sort of shit. Because I think it plays into Twitch and the way Twitch has been changing a little bit. This isn't totally unprecedented. I believe this happened in StarCraft a while ago. It was before my time. I was talking to Heyoka about it a little bit. I actually don't know the specific example he was talking about, but apparently this did happen once before where there was a female streamer, and it turns out there was somebody next to her playing, and she was just the pretty face attached to it. I don't know exactly what the strategy is in mind for these people that do this. It's like kind of esports catfishing, I guess you could call it, right? Fishing for some catfish. It reminds me of the people on OkCupid that upload different pictures of other people. And I don't mean a fake account where you're going to go on there and you upload fake pictures and you're trolling people or trying to get funny reactions. I've seen a ton of YouTube series where people go over all that, troll people and then post their answers and stuff. I mean, the real people that post pictures of themselves that look nothing like themselves or are photoshopped, and then you meet them and you're just holding up the cell phone. This doesn't look anything like you. What are you talking about? How does this picture look like you? If you didn't text me and I walked into this restaurant, I would have not known which table to sit at because you look that dissimilar from your online identity. What was the plan? Did you think I was just going to show up and go, "Oh, that's weird. You lost 100 pounds, got a haircut, put on some makeup, and are wearing different clothes"? How... Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I'd just show up and be so desperate that, fuck it. She's a liar. She's already starting this relationship off on pretty much the worst foot possible, but I'm sure she's a great person, is going to make up with it, and her genuine and honest personality, right? I mean, what is any somewhat, thoughtful person? I guess thoughtful is the right word. Anyone with a brain, a baseline of, I don't know if you're the kind of person I want to spend my life with. What are you doing? What are you thinking? And that's what I wonder with this streaming stuff. What's the late game? Is it just possible that this is someone who they did it once and they're like, wow, people believed it. Let's see how far we can take it. And you just keep pushing it until you get to the point where you're like, well, I'm in over my head. I'm just going to keep treading water. And it's it's going to implode, but you might as well just keep running with it as long as you can. It sounds like they didn't have a very good plan. They didn't really think about, well, what happens if she gets invited to a tournament? All you have to say is, if you start with "my parents won't let me," it's a weird answer, but yeah, fine, whatever. Magic Amy's not allowed to go to Hearthstone tournaments. Apparently, her parents have a very strong hold over her life. I guess that's a possible thing. So yeah, she got fired from Tempo Storm. That's unfortunate, and their statement was also really weird. First, they said that oh, well, it's not just because it was her, like, pretending to be a guy, but it's because of all these other things. I don't know. The whole thing is just really funny. But I'm not surprised that it happened. I feel like it could have happened a lot sooner, and I also wouldn't have been surprised, especially with the rise of all the titty streamers, the cam girls breaking into Twitch. So bad that Twitch had to change their policies on clothing and the way they go about streams, where it really needs to be about the game first and about the pretty face and the boobies second. And now that they've had to tone it down, I'm just not surprised that people have tried to do this. I've had this idea before. I've thought about this in one of those drunken nights when you're hanging out with other esports people, just like, how funny would it be if we got some cute girl that had God's play for her and fooled people? I've had that conversation before, except the difference is a rational person says, yeah, that is funny to think about. It's not funny to actually do for anything more than a day. It's not funny for anything more than like an April Fool's joke. That would be a funny April Fool's joke. We bring in some girl, we put her on the BTS stream, she's playing, she's tearing people up at 6K MMR. They're like, oh my god, who is this new hire? BTS found the first 7K MMR female player in North America. Tell us how you feel. Going a whole thing. At the end of the day, oh, it was just a stupid April Fool's Day joke. That would be funny. That's tasteful. You can do that. But like here, you're just exploiting people. This is eerily similar to the guy on Twitch that pretended to be disabled. The guy he played games in a wheelchair. He had a wheelchair cam. It's like this camera shot, except higher up, more down on his dick, so you can see that his legs are attached to a chair. Okay, very obvious. It always has the little stream donation thing, like, donate to me so I can get my legs fixed, or I can get new wheels, whatever the fuck it is he was claiming he needed. And then one day, the dipshit pulls a Zyori, forgets to change the overlay, forgets to turn the stream off, and then gets up out of his wheelchair and just walks up to go get a glass of water or whatever it is, and it's like, dude, if your whole plan is to be a scam artist, you gotta put a little more effort into scamming people. You gotta not get out of your wheelchair. You gotta get another monitor and double check when the light's on, man. You gotta be a little more tactful than that. And I just don't understand. I don't. How are people so bad at being criminals? I guess it's not quite criminal behavior, but I don't know. I don't know what the guy was thinking. I don't know what Magic Amy was thinking. I guess anything for a little bit of attention. I was told while I was in China by a few people that there's this trend in China for young girls that are desperately trying to break into esports because Dota's so popular over there, that really want to be like a caster or a personality, and they'll do just anything they can for some attention. Like some bullshit like this. This happened in Korea, South Korea, obviously, but I mean the mentality, or there were. I think that whole situation with Hippovic, remember there was that big Reddit shitstorm of him being really mean to somebody who was trying to take pictures in a player booth. And someone told me that is a good example of someone trying to make us think about something ridiculous and then use those airwaves, those headlines to get some attention, then leverage that attention to focus on whatever their skill is or whatever it is they want to focus on, and try to make a name for themselves that way. So maybe that's what Magic Amy wanted to do. It's the perfect name for this, though. The whole thing just cracks me up. Good old Hearthstone drama. Huh? Oh, man. So, moving forward here, we've got about 15 minutes left. What else do we have on the docket? There were some other things I wanted to mention, but we got to talk about porn, and that's going to be at least a 10-minute conversation. I see myself ranting about this because I feel like I talk about porn on this podcast a lot. Poop and porn are two very recurring topics, and the former I could do without. The latter, I think it's okay. It's a thought-provoking thought piece. Now, who saw Afroman punch that woman? That shit blew my mind. There's something crazy, there's something crazy about it, but it was on Reddit, so it's not like anything new. It's I saw one down Reddit, there was one post that said Afroman punches girl in the face on stage. The next one, right below it, says Afroman goes to jail for that hit. And he paid a $330 bond, but he's on stage, he's playing and this girl gets on stage and she starts kind of dancing a little bit, and she's moving her butt up and down. She starts rubbing her butt up on his butt, and he turns and goes, motherfucker, and just boom, right around, just straight up hooks her, and she falls over backwards like something out of a cartoon. Her feet are up in the air, and he just goes back to playing, and she just gets up and walks away. That's the craziest part. That is let's just show the video. Afroman Here we go. Afroman slap a woman. That's what it's called on YouTube. All right, here. Let's turn this way down, and let's ruin our production value here. Okay, so here we go. XSplit, please. There we go. All right, so we're just gonna watch Afroman punch this girl. Great. XSplit is now crashing. That is even better. Oh God. He just hits her. All right. Well, we learned something new today. XSplit does not like it when you play Afroman. So we're back, and then of course I came back and I was muted again. So this has just turned into a disaster. We're gonna have to do some video editing tonight to get these videos where they need to be to post this podcast. That's gonna be fun. More work for old Zyori. Great. Thank you, XSplit. Thank you, Afroman. So anyway, I just wanted to make mention of that. That was one of those weird headlines that I saw of just, why did Afroman punch that girl? And why did he get out on a $330 bond? Why did he have to hit her? He could have just pushed her. He could have just been like, get off my ass, and just shoved her. You know, that would have at least been more tasteful. Like, that wasn't just a put him up, you know, square up and let's box. That was just a straight up like, I'm holding a guitar, you don't see it coming. Oh, clobbered her. Jesus, talk about violence. That was brutal. That was brutal. One of the other notes here I want to make, The Imitation Game, an amazing fucking movie. If you don't know the story of Alan Turing, I don't want to spoil it for you, but you're missing out. You should go see it. It was just in theaters. I think it's probably in box office or not in the box office, for rental. It's not on Netflix yet, but I'm sure you can find it on the net. It's really, really good. Benedict Cumberbatch. Oh, he's amazing, and it's just a really fascinating story. It got me really thinking. If you have no idea, there is going to be a spoiler coming, but he's a homosexual. I think that's fairly well known about Turing. He's the kind of the father of computer science. He cracked the Enigma code in World War II, basically won us the war. A pretty amazing story, but of course, being gay was illegal in England back in those days in the 50s, and well, he got caught diddling one of the buttholes. And England was not too happy about that. So there's a lot of it's a really fascinating story about history and about World War II and the technology of the time in computer science. But it's also really fascinating for the kind of the emotional aspect of it, the dynamic of just him and his sexuality at the time, and the woman that he interacts with. Keira Knightley plays her. She just does a really good job of playing a very weird character. I feel like Benedict Cumberbatch does it a little more naturally, and she's, I don't know, I see her and I think the girl from Pirates of the Caribbean, you know, and it's a very different role. Very, very different indeed. Worth seeing. If you haven't seen it, rent it, download it, whatever you got to do. Check it out, The Imitation Game about Alan Turing. Okay, so let's talk about sex here, and I would show you this screen, but I'm afraid XSplit's going to poop again. So we're going to talk about Rashida Jones. Now, this is just one of these weird things that happened. It happened about almost 3 weeks ago when she made this statement. I wanted to talk about it then, but it just felt out of place while I was in China. Then it didn't really fit into the DAC conversation. But she's just talking about porn. And I don't know when it is that these celebrities are just randomly doing podcasts. She was on some show called The Wrap. I don't know what that is. And she's talking about the negative impact of sexualized culture at Sundance. Okay, so she was at Sundance. And she says the porn industry is damaging for young women. And I'm going to read some Rashida Jones quotes here. This is what she said to The Wrap. Every time I hear The Wrap now, I think the clap, because we're talking about sex. Anyway, the difference between sexuality and sexualization. Women should feel pleasure and have sex and feel good about it. And there's a lot of shame involved with porn. And she goes on to say, she argued that women derive no pleasure from the sex they have in porn, quote, because it's performative. Women aren't feeling joy, she said. It would be a whole different conversation if women were like, quote, hey, we're having sex. We love it so much. We want more of it. We feel so good about our bodies and ourselves. Oh, yeah, end quote. But that's not really the conversation that we're having right now, is it? And, like, oh, God. I'm just going to keep reading quotes before I start ripping this apart. So then she continues to say, it's performative. It's fulfilling a male fantasy. It's not about how you feel about it. It's not like they're going with it because it's like they're going with it just because they're making money. Quote, the quote, female empowerment thing makes it tricky to have that conversation because you're making money and therefore you're empowered. But what is the real cost to your soul and to your psyche? Holy shit, this is like the most judgmental way of talking about women in pornography. It kind of blows my mind a little bit. Here's another quote. They're not connecting with or considering the real cost, the psychological cost, the emotional cost, the physical cost to your body. The trauma it does to your body to have sex for a living is a real thing. And I think by the time they realize it, it's not too late. And I think by the time they realize it, it's too late because they... What? I don't know what that... yeah, they can't go back to their lives because they've lost their childhoods. That's a weird sentence. Childhoods, plural. So... God, where to even start? The last thing, there's something that bothers me about this. There's a connection to the NFL that comes to mind right away. Very analogous. There's like, they're all these girls, they're just fucking for the money, and they're not thinking about the cost on their body, their emotions, their psychology. It's like, think about football. Any football player that's going into the NFL knows that they're going to get fucked up. All you have to do is look at the guys in the Hall of Fame. You know, before every game when they bring out the guys, they're like, hey, these are the Hall of Famers. These guys are awesome. These are the guys that made the things happen so you guys could be here and make more money. Yeah. You ever notice that they're all limping? They've all got canes and plastic hips and fake lungs and eye patches and no teeth and no hair, and they're all fucked up looking from all the drugs and steroids and getting bashed around. They still do it. We still pay millions and millions of dollars to watch these overgrown animals pummel the shit out of each other. What do you think the UFC is? People literally getting paid to beat the fuck out of each other. You could make a case that, well, a lot of these young guys are just, excited and brave, and they're not really thinking about the long-term damage they could do to themselves. Most of them do think about it, and most of them say, I know the risks, but guess what? This is what I like, bitch. Back off my skills. How about you let me do me and you do you? Don't tell me when I'm empowered. That's what I don't like about this. I've seen the big thing that bothers me about this whole rant about how all of the women doing porn are victims is it's insulting to those women, first of all, because think about a stripper. Most strippers, in a reputable strip club will say, who's really getting played here, right? Is it me, the girl who has to stand here and not have sex and shake my boobies? Or is it the guy that's sitting in a chair getting no real sexual satisfaction? You're not allowed to finish in public at most strip clubs, right? Who is literally just throwing money onto the floor to have the opportunity to sit here and buy overpriced drinks. Who's actually over the barrel right here? And I don't know numbers, but I would say there is a fair portion, to put it mildly, of women that are very comfortable, very confident with what they're doing in that kind of a line of work, and are A-okay with ripping the fuck out of the horny dudes that are satisfied coming through that door, sitting in a chair, watching them dance around, and paying hundreds of dollars. That sounds like a pretty equitable arrangement to me. Not for everyone. Not everyone is interested in showing their boobies for money, but those that are usually doing it because they like it. Are you telling me that there is not a section of porn stars that are just nymphomaniacs that just love fucking and have found a way to leverage something they love with making an assload of money? Are you telling me that all of the female porn stars out there are just subject to the terrible sexualized, abusive nature of porn directors and people that are just like, I'm a jackhammer, I can't even feel it anymore, let's just do this for the videotape? It's not always an act. I've seen plenty of interviews of porn stars talk about how they have a relationship and they also do porn. And the person that they're with knows that there's not an emotional attachment to the porn fucking, but, your body's still reacting to stuff. You're still screaming and doing things. Some of it's natural. Some things you can't fake, right? It blows my mind how you can have such a loud voice and have such a narrow... This strikes me as someone who's never really watched porn before. I've heard a lot of people criticize lesbian porn. It's a great example because it's made for men. Right? It's kind of this weird, ironic thing where real lesbian sex is not much like the lesbian porn you see all over Pornhub that is created for guys by guys. If that makes sense. I think you can make a stronger case for that particular sect of porn, but we don't have sex slavery in this country. It's not like all these girls that moved out to Los Angeles, got fake tits, and are actively pursuing a career in pornography are being exploited and completely put to ultimatums. We don't have pimps. This is we do have pimps, but not in the context of the porn industry. It's completely different. You have choice. And this whole argument also... implies that there's no such thing as couples porn. That was one to me, always the fallback, the failsafe of all these stupid porn talks. My hair is out of control tonight. Of all the pretentious. You ever see that meme of that girl? I don't know what the meme is called, but the one, it's like the hippie girl with the hat and the sweater, and she's got really gross dreads, and it's always like a comment about like, oh, says we have to fight for equality, but gets upset when a man won't open the door. It's usually something like that. I see him pop up on Reddit at least like once a week. I remember talking to like the most liberal girl I've ever talked to that had a very similar thought process about porn. How it's all women's rights. It's always women getting put down. It's always women getting slapped. I'm like, are you kidding me? Have you even looked at the catalog on Pornhub? There is a whole section of dominatrix. There is a whole section where you can just watch dudes get kicked in the balls. You can actually find that on the internet. That is a subset of porn. There is a whole subset, there is a whole culture, a whole subculture of women dominating men in a way that I don't understand how anyone finds it fun to watch or be a part of, unless you're the girl just beating the fuck out of you. I see how that's fun, just slapping them, kicking them into, they're paying you to kick them in the nuts. Talk about your dream job. Talk about your dream job, right? You can't just take this narrow focus of the shitty porn out there, the commercialized porn that is made by men, geared for men, that doesn't give a shit about women. That is some of it. I'm not saying all porn is great, natural, and healthy, and everybody who, does gaping loves having their butthole look like a cork, or a thermos. I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but I don't know that everyone does that is forced to, held to some ultimatum where if you don't do this, then we're going to beat the fuck out of you. I just don't know that that's actually the case in all these times. And I know couples porn is a thing. Like, there are people out there that get off by videotaping themselves fucking, that are madly in love and have an exclusive relationship, and then upload it for people to see. That's a whole... Voyeurism is a thing. And that is not about exploiting women. Swingers are a thing. That is not about exploiting women. If you decide to videotape it, that doesn't change the paradigm of what's going on. I'm not debating that the porn industry has some issues, but I am debating these hyperbolic statements that essentially all porn has. She said that there's a lot of it, shame is involved. It's like, but it goes both ways. It's just what people like to watch. It's better that people get to watch it and get that out than they internalize it and get all this pent-up sexual frustration. That's when people go out and do bad stuff. That's when they do crazy things so they don't have an outlet. You gotta have an outlet. Come on, Rashida Jones, you gotta get with it. People I love the quote of it'd be a different conversation if women were like, we're having sex, we love it so much, we want more of it, we feel so good about our bodies. But that's not the conversation. It's like, fuck you and fuck that conversation you're having about that conversation. No one talks like that. And what dream world do you live in where porn stars are talking to each other like, yeah, we're having sex right now. This is awesome. We really love it a lot. Oh, man, we want some more of this. We're feeling good about our bodies, Can you imagine if you had a porn like that? Like they're fucking doggy style, and she just turns around and says, wait, hold on a second. I feel really good about my body. High fucking five, motherfucker. Like, there's a whole dynamic to sex that is that whole female paradigm of I want to feel overpowered, but not too much overpowered. Throw me down, but not too hard, but hard enough that I think you're serious, but really I know you're not, but you are. There's this weird sexual paradigm that goes on in our heads, and you can't just boil it down to, people are getting shamed in sex. I saw another article where she was talking about, there's been an increase in the percentage of guys that want to have anal sex with their female counterparts because of porn right now, because of the porn industry, because of the rise in popularity in anal sex. Okay, so what? What is so bad about people asking? That is my big problem with that statement. I'm not saying that you should take it in the butt if you don't want to, but I don't think there's anything wrong with having a healthy dialogue about the potential benefits or drawbacks of anal intercourse. That's fine. That's something mature adults do. They have a dialogue. They talk about things. That's better than the dude thinking to himself, maybe I'll put it in there and she won't notice one day. You gotta talk it out. You gotta hash it out. You gotta have the back and forth. What turns me on? What turns you on? That's part of a healthy relationship. And having that closed-minded nature of just anal sex is about shaming, and it's just, that's fucked up. I don't know. And then to say, more people are asking for it. That's really fucked up, too. There's actually nothing fucked up about that at all. As a species in general, we're becoming more and more liberal about sex stuff. You know, things being on TV, pornography becoming more kinky and crazy and more widely acceptable, and you know, sites like Pornhub and all these others that just give you free access to porn if you have, you know, you're not part of the Chinese firewall and you're not in the UK and, you know, you have internet access. That's crazy and new compared to the access that people used to have to porn. I'm not surprised that there is an increasing dialogue in sexual tone and the way things should go about, but I think dialoguing is fine. I think that's good. I think one of the big problems with sex and porn and everything else, especially in America, is that we don't talk about it enough. Sex education comes too late, and when you do have it, it's not really that useful. You're talking about abstinence. You're not showing people how to put condoms on. That's what's really important. Get down and dirty. Bring some dildos to class. Don't show me a picture of a vagina diagram, one that's cut in half so you can see all the inner. You're never going to see that. What good is that? You know what picture I'm talking about, right? Where they do the same thing with guys, where it's like the profile picture cut in half. It's like, this is what the inside of a penis looks like if you dissect it right down the middle. How is that remotely helpful? How does that help? I have one, and I still don't care. You know, what are you talking about? What are you even doing at that point? Just, you know, I digress. We've gone on too long about sex and porn. I had to get that off my chest, though. Rashida Jones, you're letting me down. I like Parks and Rec. I like The Office, but God, come on. This is some baby back bullshit, and you all know it. Okay, well, that's good. That was a good way to end the podcast. Thank you, guys, for enjoying that. That was fun. Glad we decided to live stream the Zyori Podcast. One of the best ways to support the podcast is to subscribe on Twitch. We don't take donations here, but subscribers are always welcome. We do sub games. We're doing them right before this on the reg, so you can welcome yourself to the Zyori team. Other than that, yeah, iTunes, you know where to find the podcast, Zyori.tv. That's where this baby gets uploaded and posted. Whoa, pardon me. I'm going to have to chop up this video since XSplit crashed, but we'll get her on YouTube. We'll get the audio-only version uploaded and actually parsed into the RSS feed. So hopefully you all enjoyed it. Until next time, we'll see you on the next podcast.